You are 11 years old, and you are about to take a test that will follow you for the next 80 years. It's 1921. You're sitting in a California classroom when a man from Stanford walks in with a stack of papers. Your teacher has already whispered that you might be one of the special ones. You take his test. Weeks later, a letter arrives at your house. You scored above 135, top 1% in the state. And then they tell you what that means. Your parents are told. Your teachers are told. You are told. For the rest of your life, everyone who meets you will know one thing about you before anything else. This one is supposed to be brilliant. There were 1,528 children like you, and they followed you for the next 80 years. Every job, every marriage, every promotion, every failure, all of it recorded. It became the longest-running study in the history of psychology, and it was built to prove one clean idea, that a high IQ is destiny. It proved almost the exact opposite. And buried in those decades of data is a finding so uncomfortable that the man who ran the study spent the rest of his life trying to explain it away. Today, a high IQ is mostly entertainment, free online tests, videos about the 7 signs you're secretly a genius, the quiet suspicion that maybe your brain runs a little hotter than everyone else's. But in 1921, a Stanford psychologist named Terman decided to settle the question for real, and settling it meant following actual children across their entire lives. You should know who Terman was, because it explains what he expected to find. He built the Stanford Binet, the test that made the letters IQ a household word in America. He was also a committed eugenicist who believed intelligence was largely inherited and that identifying gifted children was a matter of national importance. He wasn't neutral. He expected these children to become the leaders, the inventors, the great minds of their generation. He called them his gifted group. Everyone else called them the Termites. By 1928, he had 1,528 of them, average age 11, nearly all with IQs of 135 or higher. And the first results were exactly what he wanted. The stereotype at the time was the sickly genius, the frail, awkward, socially broken child whose brain had cost him everything else. Terman's data demolished it. His gifted children were healthier than average, better adjusted, better in school, more socially confident. They were even taller. The only measurable downside he found was that slightly more of them needed glasses. So round 1 went to Terman. Being extremely intelligent didn't make you a broken person. It seemed to make you better at almost everything. But the study was only just beginning, and the decades ahead were about to take his hypothesis apart. The Termites did well, genuinely well. They became doctors, lawyers, professors, engineers. They earned more than average and were educated far beyond the national norm. But Terman hadn't set out to produce a group of comfortable professionals. He'd set out to find the next Einstein, the next Darwin, the next Curie. And across 1,528 of the most intellectually gifted children in California, followed for 80 years, not one became an epical genius. Not one changed the world the way he'd predicted. There were no Nobel Prizes, but there were 2 Nobel Prizes hiding in this story. And this is where it turns. While Terman was assembling his cohort, his team tested other California schoolchildren who narrowly missed the cutoff. They didn't score high enough. They were sent back to their classrooms and forgotten. 2 of those rejected boys were named William Shockley and Luis Alvarez. Shockley went on to co-invent the transistor, the component underneath every piece of electronics you have ever owned. Both men won the Nobel Prize in physics. The children who failed Terman's test won the prize his chosen ones never did. And if a test that measures intelligence can't tell the boy who invents the transistor from the boy who doesn't, what exactly is it measuring? That question has an answer, but it wasn't found by comparing the Termites to everyone else. It was hiding inside the group itself. In 1968, Terman's longtime collaborator Melita Ohden did something nobody had thought to do. Instead of comparing gifted children to average ones, she compared gifted children to each other. She took the 100 most successful men in the study and the 100 least successful, defining success as whether their careers actually used the intellect they'd been selected for, and put the 2 groups side by side. The successful 100 were what you'd expect: professors, scientists, physicians, attorneys. The unsuccessful 100 were electronics technicians, police officers, carpenters, a pool cleaner, along with a scattering of lawyers, doctors, and academics who had simply failed. Same childhood, same label, same promise. Two completely different lives. So Odin checked the obvious explanation first. She compared their IQs. The successful group averaged around 157. The unsuccessful group averaged around 150. 7 points apart. A gap so small, it explained essentially nothing. Both groups were staggeringly intelligent. Intelligence was not the variable. So what was? Terman and Odin had already named it 2 decades earlier, and the wording is worth hearing exactly as they wrote it. The 4 traits on which the 2 groups differed most widely were persistence in the accomplishment of ends, integration toward goals, self-confidence, and freedom from inferiority feelings. Read that again, because there is not a single cognitive ability on the list. Persistence, direction, confidence, and the absence of the private belief that you aren't good enough. The men who made something of extraordinary intelligence weren't the ones who had more of it. They were the ones who kept going, knew what they were aiming at, and didn't quietly believe they were frauds. Stanford's own account of the study adds one more difference that's harder to sit with: early parental encouragement. Not just what the children brought, what was poured into them. And this is exactly where modern psychology picked up the thread. When researcher Angela Duckworth built her work on grit, sustained passion and perseverance toward long-term goals, she cited Terman and Odin's finding directly. The pattern they stumbled onto in the 1940s became one of the most studied ideas in psychology 80 years later. Now I want to be honest about the other side, because the internet usually isn't. None of this means IQ is meaningless. It isn't. It's one of the more reliably predictive measures psychology has, and the termites genuinely did outperform the general population on income, education, and health. There's a long-standing idea called the threshold hypothesis, that above roughly 120 IQ, extra points stop buying you much additional creative achievement. But recent research complicates it. Some studies place the threshold far lower, and it appears to shift depending on what kind of creativity you're measuring. It's a live argument, not a settled fact. The study has real flaws, too. Terman's cohort was overwhelmingly white and middle class. Teachers pre-selected who got tested, quietly filtering the sample before a single child sat down. And he never followed a matched group of children who just missed the cutoff, the one comparison that would have told him the most. But the finding inside the group survives all of it, because those 1,528 children were matched. Same era, same state, same test, same label. And when you hold intelligence roughly constant and ask why some lives opened up and others closed down, the answer that comes back is persistence, direction, confidence, and encouragement. So, what does an extremely high IQ actually do to your life? It opens the door. It does not walk you through it. It hands you a faster processor and no instructions. Terman spent 40 years searching his own data for proof that brilliance was destiny. And what he found instead was that the smartest children in California ended up scattered across the entire range of human outcomes. Professors and pool cleaners, side by side, separated by traits nobody had thought to measure. And somewhere in a California classroom in 1921, 2 boys failed that test, went back to their desks, and grew up to win the Nobel Prize. If you've ever been called gifted and quietly wondered why life didn't unfold the way everyone promised, that's the answer. It was never about how much you were given. It was about what you kept doing with it after everyone stopped watching. If this changed how you think about intelligence, tell me in the comments. Were you the kid who got called gifted, and what actually happened? I read them all. Subscribe if you want more of the mind explained properly, and I'll see you in the next one.